mated to the Lycan King. Chapter 11. Raven stood in the torchlit corridor, her heartbeat pulsing in her ears. The walls seemed to close in around her as she and Lucian grappled with the final words their captured intruder had spat out mere moments ago. Cedric's name lingered in the air, charging the space with a sense of looming catastrophe. Raven's hand drifted to the swell of her belly, a silent reassurance to her unborn daughters that they were safe in this moment at least. Lucian hovered at her side, jaw tense, eyes flicking from her face to her stomach, as though torn between the kingdom's needs and his desperate desire to shield her from all harm. She gently placed her free hand over his, sensing the tremor in his fingers. "I'm all right," she murmured. "We'll face this together." He let out a slow breath. "I know, it's just... the risk has never felt so personal." His gaze traveled over her pregnant form, the worry there unmasked. These children, they haven't even taken their first breath, and already, an enemy threatens them. Raven leaned her forehead against his for a moment, drawing strength from the warmth of his skin. She thought of the intruder, bound in the interrogation room, still refusing to divulge much beyond Cedric's name and ominous threats about a looming battle. "They won't win," she said quietly. "We didn't come this far just to surrender our future now." Lucian nodded, but the flicker of anxiety remained in his eyes. He led her to a small alcove where they could speak in private. The corridor bustled with pack members rushing to fulfill last-minute orders. Some carried weapons, others carted provisions, all galvanized by the knowledge that Cedric's attack was imminent. Raven observed them, pride mingling with alarm. The kingdom had rallied around her and Lucian before, driving out threats that once seemed insurmountable, but now the stakes felt even higher. If Cedric truly aimed to exploit her pregnancy or seize her unborn daughters, he had already crossed lines that chilled her to the core. A soft footstep made them turn. Kieran and Ella approached at a brisk pace, the latter's eyes shining with determination. Kieran looked momentarily relieved to see Raven upright and well, as if expecting worse news. He paused before them, giving Lucian a nod of respect, then gently clasped Raven's hand. "You felt my distress through the bond," Raven guessed, her voice hushed. His grip tightened. "Yes, Ella and I came as soon as we heard about the intruder's threat. We can't stand idle in the south when you're in danger." Ella folded her arms across her chest, gaze steady. "We're stronger together," she said, the soft timbre of her voice laced with unwavering resolve. "We all know that." Grateful for their presence, she fought back the sting of tears, cursing the surge of hormones that made every emotion sharpen. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered, swallowing around the knot in her throat. "I'm afraid Cedric may be more cunning than any of us expected." Lucian gave Kieran a grave look. His name keeps surfacing, tied to old grudges and a potential alliance of rogues. For all we know, he's been planning this for years, waiting for the moment to strike. Kieran nodded, sliding a glance at Ella. "Then we'll stop him. We've been through one war already. If Cedric thinks he can tear us apart, he's sorely mistaken." Lucian offered a rare smile at that, though it flickered under the weight of everything left unsaid. "Agreed. The pack is mobilizing as we speak. Darius and Thalos are coordinating final defenses. We have to be ready for anything." Ella reached out and touched Raven's shoulder, her gaze warm with empathy. "I know you won't hide away, but promise me you'll be careful. You have more than just yourself to protect now." Raven nodded. "I promise I'll be prudent, but I won't cower. I've come too far for that." They parted ways, each heading to fulfill a role in the impending fight. Lucian helped Raven find a moment's rest in their chambers, but rest was fleeting. The constant clang of weapons in the courtyard and hurried footsteps of messengers echoed through the stone corridors. Within the hour, they were summoned to the main hall where Darius and Thalos had gathered a cluster of warriors around a broad table. Maps were unrolled, daggers pinning the edges. Candles flickered, casting shifting shadows on determined faces. Lucian stood at the table's head, Raven by his side, her hand resting protectively over the curve of her stomach. Darius's expression was solemn, his voice low. We've sent scouts to all known trails leading to the kingdom. They've reported signs of rogue gatherings, footprints, abandoned camps, the occasional mention of Cedric's name among frightened villagers. We suspect they'll converge on us within the next day or two. Thalos, arms folded, added, We've also found evidence of infiltration attempts inside the territory, traps disarmed near the western border. If this isn't just random sabotage, Cedric might be orchestrating multiple strikes at once. Lucian exhaled, scanning the assembled warriors. Then we proceed with the plan. Double patrols, secure every perimeter, make sure our allies in the outlying villages are warned. Kieran and Ella entered, then moving to stand near Raven. Kieran's eyes flicked across the map. My best fighters arrived with me. We'll join your forces wherever you need us. Ella asintio. Ella nodded. We're not leaving until we know Raven and Lucian are safe. Gratitude for their loyalty. She gave them a brave smile, though inside she marveled at how uncertain every step forward felt. She was carrying twins whose existence seemed to be a beacon for this new menace. She set her jaw, refusing to let fear root itself. We'll face them head on, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. If Cedric wants to test our resolve, let him come. Some of the warriors murmured in agreement, and Lucian dismissed them to prepare. Only Darius and Thalos lingered behind with Lucian, Raven, Kieran, and Ella. The hush felt thick in the large hall. Darius cleared his throat, glancing at Lucian. I want to apologize, he said quietly. I've never doubted your leadership, but I've carried regrets from past battles, times I could have done more. I won't let that happen again. Lucian's posture softened. Darius, you've been at my side through the worst. You're the last person who needs to apologize. He eyed Thalos. The same goes for you. We all share our burdens. This threat doesn't rest on any one of us alone. Thalos lowered his gaze briefly. I appreciate that. He paused, swallowing hard, as though admitting something cost him effort. I used to think all I had was my duty. Now I see how the rest of you have each other for love, for friendship. Maybe it's time I let myself be open to that too. Raven placed a gentle hand on Thalos's arm, smiling. You deserve happiness as much as any of us. She saw his lips twitch upward, a fleeting but genuine smile. In that moment, she sensed a quiet shift in him, a door cracked open for possibilities he once ignored. Kieran cleared his throat, a subtle encouragement for them to remain hopeful. We all have a reason to win this fight. Families, mates, a future we want to protect. Let's hold on to that. With that, the group dispersed, each carrying new resolve. Raven followed Lucian back to their chambers. Once inside, he urged her to rest again. She tried, but the restless energy in her body refused to calm. Instead, she settled on a cushioned seat by the window while Lucian stood guard near her, arms folded. She could see how he scanned every shadow with hawk-like focus, every muscle taut. She beckoned him over, gently massaging the tension in his shoulders once he was close. The warmth of her palms on his neck seemed to draw a low exhale from him. I can't shake the feeling that we're on the edge of something terrible, he admitted, voice hushed. She kissed his temple, letting her lips linger against his skin. We are, but we're not alone. Morning dawned under an uneasy sky. Heavy clouds drifted overhead, casting the courtyard in a dreary light that fit the mood of the pack assembling in their battle gear. Raven stood with Kieran on one side and Elle on the other, scanning the lines of warriors prepared for the imminent conflict. On the far side, Thalos tested the tension of a new bowstring, while Darius methodically checked weapons. Lucian crossed the yard, issuing final commands to a group of archers who would man the walls. Each face in the crowd bore the same grim determination. Suddenly, a distant horn blasted from the lookout post, the signal for approaching enemies. A ripple of alarm ran through the courtyard. Lucian whirled to catch Raven's eye. She locked gazes with him, heart thumping. This was it. No more waiting. Darius called out that Cedric's forces had been spotted in the nearby woodlands, moving swiftly toward the main gates. Lucian hurried to Raven's side, wanting to insist she remain behind the lines, but the fierce set of her jaw stopped him short. "I won't be helpless," she said quietly, "but I won't be reckless. Keep me near, but let me fight if I must." His throat bobbed as he swallowed his protests. "Stay close to me, then. Promise me you'll listen if we need to retreat." She nodded, love shining in her eyes. "I promise." Troops spread out along the courtyard and ramparts. Kieran took Ella's hand, murmuring a soft vow to protect her. She raised her chin, pressing a tender kiss to his cheek in reply, then moved off to coordinate with several southern warriors. Thunder rumbled in the distance as though nature itself understood the clash about to unfold. The first wave of attackers appeared along the tree line, dark shapes weaving between the oaks. Raven's stomach lurched when she saw how many of them there were. Cedric apparently commanded a sizable force, easily rivaling that of previous threats. Shouts rang out as the enemy advanced, and in the eerie hush before impact, Raven heard Lucian whisper her name. She turned to find him giving her one last, searching look. "Whatever happens," he said, "know I love you." She squeezed his hand. "I know. I love you too." Then the intruders broke from the cover of trees, sprinting across open ground. Arrows flew from the castle walls, some lodging in the rogues, others thudding into the dirt. Lucian roared an order to hold position, waiting until the enemy closed in enough to ensure minimal friendly fire. Raven's heart pounded. She drew on her elemental magic, feeling the roiling heat spark within her. She saw Kieran's eyes glow with that familiar wind-infused aura, his sister's powers reflecting across their twin bond. The clash erupted in seconds. Metal clanged against metal. Wolves shifted into their bestial forms, fangs bared as they tore into rogue invaders. Lucian darted forward, slamming aside two attackers with a single powerful blow. Darius parried a blade headed for Lucian's back, his loyalty manifest in swift, deadly skill. Thalos moved like a specter along the perimeter, ensuring no flank was overrun, his bow twanging with relentless precision before he too shifted and leapt into close combat. Raven kept pace with Lucian, mindful of the twins in her womb. She used controlled bursts of flame to scatter foes, while Kieran unleashed slicing gusts of wind that sent howling adversaries sprawling. Ella fought gracefully near Kieran, a testament to how far she had come from the uncertain woman she once was. Her strikes were decisive, her eyes aflame with protectiveness for those she loved. Attention. She turned to find a rogue lunging at her, a blade aimed at her center. She thrust a burst of fire outward, meeting him with a flame-laced punch that knocked him back. Her pulse hammered in her ears, fear warring with adrenaline. She glimpsed Lucian, silhouette lit by the glow of her fire, fending off another wave of attackers. With every slash of his claws, every furious roar, she sensed the desperation fueling him, the knowledge that if these rogues got past him, they might endanger her or their unborn children. Across the field, she spotted Kieran engaged in a fierce duel with a tall, gray-furred wolf. Ella backed him up, distracting the opponent at a crucial moment so Kieran could deliver a final strike. Raven felt a surge of pride at Ella's unwavering courage. Their bond glimmered like a beacon. Suddenly, a group of rogues converged on Thalos near the castle wall. Raven's breath caught as she saw him valiantly fend off several enemies at once. He moved with lethal grace, but the numbers were against him. Darius caught sight of this and roared Thalos's name, fighting his way over. Despite Darius's intervention, a rogue's spear struck Thalos hard in the shoulder. He stumbled, blood spattering the ground. Raven felt her chest tighten, a pang of horror and sympathy. She unleashed a wave of flame to scatter the rogues swarming Thalos, just as Darius crushed another with savage finality. Thalos dropped to one knee, eyes clenched in pain, yet he forced himself upright. Raven's brief glance caught the flicker in his gaze, a blend of anguish and quiet acceptance. She thought she saw something shift inside him, as though an old wound had reopened. Her heart clenched. The tide of the battle pitched and a roar of pure rage echoed from the far side. Cedric emerged, half-shifted, towering over the fallen. His eyes locked onto Lucian across the churned earth. For a heartbeat, the chaos seemed to recede, leaving only the bitter electric tension between former friends, turned mortal enemies. Cedric snarled Lucian's name, spitting curses about how Lucian had taken everything from him, how he would seize the unborn heirs to exact retribution. Raven's wolf bristled. She saw the faint tremor of fury in Lucian's stance at that monstrous threat. Lucian charged, meeting Cedric in a brutal collision of fangs and claws. Sparks of metal flew as they clashed. Cedric struck a blow across Lucian's chest, leaving claw marks that oozed red. Lucian reeled, but counterattacked with savage force, driving Cedric back. Darius guarded Lucian's flank, parrying a rogue who tried to intervene. The rest of the battlefield raged around them, but the final outcome seemed to hinge on whether Cedric or Lucian would prevail. Cedric roared about rightful power, vengeance, the monarchy's failings, and other half-coherent grievances. Lucian answered through gritted teeth that he had tried to reason with Cedric once, but no more. The next flurry of blows hammered Cedric to his knees. A hush enveloped the courtyard as the rogues, leaderless, faltered. Some fled, others fell in disarray to the renewed assault by the pack. Raven exhaled shakily, letting the tension ebb from her limbs as Lucian stood over the unconscious Cedric, battered and trembling. She ran to him, ignoring the protests of her own aching body. Kieran followed, panting. Ella joined them, chest heaving but eyes shining with relief. Darius and Thalos limped over, supporting each other. The courtyard was littered with the wounded, some moaning softly, others eerily quiet. Smoke and dust swirled in the aftermath. Lucian dropped to one knee, letting Raven cradle him. She checked his wounds, tears burning in her eyes at each gash and bruise. He clenched her hands. "I'm all right," he rasped. "It's over." Darius approached, his face a mask of pain for Thalos's injuries as well as his own, but a fierce light remained in his gaze. "Cedric, what do we do with him?" Lucian grimaced, glancing at the limp form. "Chain him. We'll decide his fate when we've tended our own." Kieran inspected the twisted expression of the unconscious enemy, then locked eyes with Raven. She felt the echo of his emotions, relief and anger swirling, but also a strange sorrow at how these conflicts always ended in bloodshed. She reached out to him, feeling his presence lighten the heaviness on her chest. They helped each other to the heart of the courtyard, sinking down on broken crates and scattered rubble. Warriors milled about, tending the wounded, gathering their dead. For a fleeting moment, they were all too exhausted to speak. Lucian tilted his head to rest against Raven's shoulder, breath coming in ragged pulls. She wove her fingers into his hair, heart brimming with love for this man who fought so valiantly for her, for their unborn daughters, for a kingdom that depended on them. She kissed the top of his head. "It's done," she murmured. "He can't hurt us now." He nodded, eyes slipping shut in momentary respite. But fate often had cruel timing. As the immediate surge of adrenaline wore off, Raven's body tensed with a strange, sharp pang low in her abdomen. She gasped, pressing a hand to her belly. Kieran, leaning close, sensed her distress at once. His eyes snapped wide with alarm. Ella lifted her head from where she was helping a wounded warrior, noticing the rigid set of Raven's spine. Lucian lifted his gaze, concern flooding back in. "Raven?" he asked, voice rough. She opened her mouth to reassure him, but another wave of pain tore through her, more intense than any cramp she had ever felt. She hunched forward, fighting a cry. Darius rushed over, pale with worry, while Thalos, bleeding from his arm, limped closer as well. The tangle of sensations within Raven's body made her vision swim. This was too soon, she thought desperately. The babies weren't due for another few weeks or so, she had been told. Lucian gathered her up against his chest, wild panic in his eyes. "Someone get the healers," he shouted, voice raw. "Now!" Raven tried to catch her breath, but another wave crashed over her and she gasped, feeling heat roll off her. A faint flicker of fire magic tingled at her fingertips, responding to her anguish. She clenched her fists, not wanting to hurt anyone by accident. Lucian tightened his hold, pressing his forehead to hers. "It's going to be all right," he said, but she heard the tremor in his tone. Her vision blurred, black dots dancing at the edges. Pain and fatigue from the fight mingled with the contraction's force, making her muscles quiver. She tasted copper on her lips, realized she might have bitten her tongue. She wanted to speak, to assure Lucian she would be fine, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she let out a ragged cry, body curling in on itself as her belly seized yet again. The sense of something shifting within her made cold dread wash over her. The babies. They were coming too soon, or something else was wrong. Kieran's face loomed over her, pale and stricken. "It's all right," he said shakily. "I feel you, Raven. I'm with you." She saw his hand glow faintly with wind energy, as though he wanted to ease her pain, but didn't know how. Lucian demanded to know where the healers were. Darius came sprinting back, panting that they were on their way. Ella crouched at Raven's side, stroking her hair, murmuring gentle words. But Raven barely registered them, locked in a whirlwind of agony that tore at her senses. She tried to focus on Lucian's heartbeat, on Kieran's calming presence, on Ella's gentle hand, but it all blurred in her swirling vision. Another searing contraction. She screamed despite herself, tears running down her cheeks. Lucian cupped her face, voice rough, repeating her name like a mantra. She felt a rush of liquid, heard the shocked voices of those around her, realized dimly that her water must have broken. Everything seemed to happen at once. The echo of footsteps as the healers finally arrived, frantic commands, the world spinning out from under her. She felt her consciousness waver, the agony too much to bear after the grueling battle. As she collapsed forward, Lucian's arms circled her protectively. She caught a glimpse of Thalos staggering forward to steady them both, blood dripping from his wounded arm. Darius knelt, trying to help, face awash in worry. Then Kieran's anguished cry cut through the chaos, and the bond between them flared with frantic energy. The last thing she saw was Lucian's anguished gaze before everything turned dark, a swirl of voices and half-formed images disappearing into oblivion. Silence fell over the courtyard as Raven sagged into Lucian's arms, the hush broken only by the labored breathing of the wounded and the faint crackle of dying flames in the distance. Kieran clasped her limp hand, dread and confusion warring in his expression. Ella hovered beside him, tears in her eyes, arms bruised and scratched from the battle. Thalos, with a ragged groan, lowered himself to the ground near them, blood still seeping from his shoulder. Darius shouted for space for the healers to move in, urgency ringing in his every word. Lucian held Raven's body as though terrified to let go. His lips moved in silent pleas, tears streaking his cheeks, while the midwife and a pair of healers urgently prepared to transport her somewhere they could properly help her. Kieran clutched at Raven's sleeve, torn between horror and the instinct to protect. Ella tried to soothe him, though her own trembling betrayed her fear. Thalos watched with eyes that spoke of deep regret, as if he questioned whether he could have done more. Hold on Raven as the healers ushered him to move her inside. Kieran and Ella followed, dread etched on their features. Thalos, despite his bleeding wound, insisted on walking behind them, staggering but resolute. Darius brought up the rear, calling for more help, forcing himself to ignore his own injuries. The battered courtyard behind them lay strewn with fallen rogues, scattered weapons, and the eerie hush of a hard-won victory overshadowed by the new battle none of them had expected: the fight for Raven's life and the safe arrival of her children. Within the stone halls, the group was met by worried faces. Servants and lesser warriors parted to let them pass. Shouts echoed. Footsteps rushed. Through it all, Raven remained limp in Lucian's arms, her skin clammy, her breathing ragged. The swirl of voices pressed in, someone calling for hot water, another checking Thalos's wound, a midwife instructing Kieran to step aside as she directed Lucian to an empty chamber. Ella caught Darius's arm, voice shaking, begging him to trust that Raven would pull through. Darius nodded, but his haunted gaze turned to Thalos, who sank against a wall, clutching his blood-soaked shoulder. For a fleeting second, Thalos's eyes met Darius's, and something passed between them, a promise of mutual care, even in this chaos. Amid the scuffle, Lucian gently laid Raven on a prepared cot, tears still on his cheeks. A trembling midwife pressed on Raven's belly to gauge the contractions, wincing at the distress on the queen's face. The half-conscious woman moaned, turning her head toward Lucian as though guided by instinct. He stroked her damp hair, voice raw as he repeated her name. Outside, Kieran hovered, overwhelmed by the surging echoes of Raven's pain through their twin bond. Ella gripped his hand, anchoring him even as the fear in her own heart threatened to undo her. The night stretched before them full of uncertainty. Within that chamber's stone walls, the hopes of an entire kingdom lay bound to Raven's fate. The hush broken by her shallow gasps, the scent of herbs mingling with the metallic tang of blood, the low murmurs of the healers. All of it spelled the dawn of a new battle, one fought not with claws and magic, but with unwavering love and the promise they had made to never yield, even when the darkness loomed more frightening than ever before.